Kia ora and welcome to the third video in our Keywords in Critical Media Studies series. And today our keyword is AI, Artificial Intelligence. So we're going to be talking about what is AI, how it works a little bit, and surfacing some key issues here. And here, I'm particularly aware that AI is this huge, sprawling field. It's very fast moving. And so a short video like this one can really only skate across the surface of some ideas here. But I hope that it'll provide a sort of springboard for your own work, and perhaps in further videos we can dive into some of these ideas in more detail. So AI, you would have seen a surge of articles about AI in recent years. AI bots, AI products and services, AI generated art perhaps, even existential risks about AI, taking over the world. So AI is everywhere, and it's clear that AI is something important and something with high stakes. But what is AI? I think there are a couple different ways of understanding AI. I think the first would be, as a sort of research field, a research field emerging from computer science and then data science as a sort of subset of those fields. Something emerging around the 1950s with a particular conference, and then diverging in different ways with different schools and so on over the decades, but a kind of a field with certain aims and objectives, and certain people that are being seen as significant, right? So that's one way of understanding AI. Another way might be as a set of techniques and architectures, right? So even though this is a vast field, there are certain kind of techniques and architectures that have been really formative in its development. Things like the perceptron, neural networks, techniques like back propagation, and so on. And so, there's a huge amount of different work going on, but a lot of the papers that you might read in AI are centered around some of these kind of core techniques and architectures. And then, there are other ways of defining it around intelligent systems and sentient systems and agency of machines and so on. I think those get really contested, debatable really quickly. And so probably won't be going into those in this video, but you can look those up if you're interested. So AI, I just want to surface a couple points in this quick video. And the first is that AI is powerful but problematic. Right, so in the last few years, again, we've seen this kind of surge of AI across the board in industries. And we've seen, new features, new capabilities that have seemed to be unlocked, right? And so we see things like, GPT-3 and language, new capabilities of translation and prediction when it comes to text. We see things like DALL-E with art generation, generating paintings and sketches, in the style of famous painters and artists on the fly. We've seen, new ways to detect cancer in the fields of medicine, new ways to sift through, thousands of candidates based on their resume in fields like HR and so on, right? So there's a huge amount of different applications of AI. And to some extent, we do see kind of new affordances, new capabilities, new dynamics emerge from these technologies, and those should be taken seriously. We do want to investigate those claims, I think, critically. Claims around AI are often made either by companies or by users, in the sort of overblown rhetoric of tech industry, where money is at stake and so on. And so thinking critically about the claims being made and then investigating those systems to see if those claims hold up, I think is really key. At the same time, AI is powerful but problematic. So in recent years, as we've seen the sort of rise in AI, we've also seen this growing awareness of the issues around AI, the problems around AI systems. We have many examples here. I think we could think of examples where language models, for example, always see nurses as female and judges and doctors as male, right? And sort of exacerbating these gender stereotypes. We can think about issues of race where AI systems have been trained to recognize ethnic minorities, for example, and flag them, or conflate different races with animals in one famous example. So there are many different case studies we could cite here of issues around race, culture, gender, religion, disability, and so on, where AI systems kind of reflect these historical inequalities and repackage them in new ways and intensify them in other ways, right? So there's a sort of turn then towards trying to understand things like bias and prejudice and stereotyping and inequality in AI systems and new fields like AI justice and so on, which are trying to get to grips with these AI systems and looking at their power but also their problems. Right, and then the second point here, I've also sort of combined a bunch of different points, but that is AI is socio-technical. So what do we mean by that? Well, AI on the one hand is a highly technical field. We've mentioned some of the architectures at work here. When you start to look in computer science papers, they get very technical very quickly. There's a sort of background that you need to fully understand some of these techniques and architectures and to understand what's going on. I would say that for researchers and scholars, we don't need to understand, of course, all of that. We don't have the training necessarily to understand that. I think it is key to understand the logic at work, the overall logic of a certain system, right? There's a certain data set that a model is trained on. Where does the data set come from? What are the data points within that set? What might be the inequalities or biases within that data set, right? What are the weights used in a particular model? And what is the fine-tuning that's done on the end of it after the model is generated to create better outcomes, perhaps, or to fine-tune those outcomes, right? So this is all sort of not necessarily the very, very technical arcane details, but starts to give us an understanding of the process involved, the production of AI, the logic built into these systems, embedded in these systems, maybe some of the values that we see when we test these systems over and over again, right? And all of that, I think, is really key then to getting a grasp of AI, especially for those doing critical research around it. So it's this technical field, but also it has these social, cultural, political, ethical dimensions, right? And I think part of the issues with some of the problems around AI is that this discipline is being quite siloed in some respects and doesn't attend to things like race, inequality, and gender stereotypes and so on in a really adequate way sometimes, right? So the problems that we listed before, we can see that there's this sort of socio-cultural, political fallout, right? Where these systems actually have this sort of highly technical underpinning, but actually can create real suffering, real precarity, real issues in the everyday lives of people, right? And so we see then in recent years different ways to kind of try to come to grips with that. Things like AI ethics, where you're trying to put together governance, regulatory approaches, some sort of safeguards, auditing around these systems, right? So trying to think about who they're impacting, what's the right thing to do, what's moral and ethical, right? And putting that together then with these technical procedures and operations, and then putting all of that within this broader umbrella of legislation and regulation and governance and so on, right? So that's just one example, I think, of how people are trying to join up these disciplines and to bring together different people that have an awareness of these systems in different ways. And so I think, one of the key challenges for the next decade, specifically for scholars and researchers, students, is that we need to bring together these different disciplines, bring together this technical awareness with an awareness of race and gender and sociality and history, right, and philosophy and other areas. And as a way to improve these systems, as a way to mitigate some of the damages and dangers that they pose, and as a way to progress and develop more communal, more equal, more inclusive, more sustainable systems moving forward into the future. So hopefully that gives you a few springboards for your own work, and we can certainly dive into some of these issues maybe in future videos.